Migrants aren't showing any signs of slowing down on a mission to take refuge in the United States. Alyssa Cole, Fox 23 News.
A caravan of thousands of migrants is headed towards the U.S. border from Central America.
U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis is expected to sign a deployment order that would send 800 troops to the Mexican border to join the National Guard, which has already been deployed. Cronkite News reporter Holly Bernstein is tracking the latest.
These troops could arrive as early as next week, but as of yet, the order has not been signed.
Wait till you see what happens over the next couple of weeks. You're going to see a very secure border. You just watch. Just watch. Very secure. And the military is ready. They're all set.
U.S. Defense Secretary James Mattis is responding to a request from President Donald Trump. Trump is calling the caravan of immigrants heading to the border a national emergency. Brian Covodrilis is one of those in the caravan. He says he spent most of his life in Texas until he was deported to Honduras a few weeks ago. He's walking back to reunite with his 3-year-old daughter.
She's the one who actually needs me the most, so, and I don't want her to grow without me.
Others hope for a better future.
There isn't any work there. We have nothing to live on.
The caravan is about 1,000 miles from the border. There are already more than 400 National Guard troops deployed along the Arizona-Mexico border in the Tucson sector, according to Customs and Border Protection. The troops will not be authorized to use lethal force to stop the migrants. The plan is for them to provide fencing, wall materials, and other technical support. This summer, additional funding for the National Guard troops was approved by the U.S. Department of Defense to keep them at the border through September 2019. And a few hundred migrants who have reached Mexico voluntarily agreed to return to their home countries. But Mexican immigration officials have started to process asylum requests for nearly 3,000 Central Americans. In the broadcast center, Holly Bernstein, Cronkite News.
Customs and Border Protection officers are gearing up and training. They're getting ready for the possible arrival of the Central American migrant caravan. Channel 5's Sierra Pizarro tells us if local Mexican officials are ready.
Today, CBP officers were fully suited and running through drills, while a Mexican official tells us neither side of the border is prepared for the thousands who might come. Preparation is underway at one of the valley's busiest ports of entry, the Gateway International Bridge. Customs and Border Protection officers suited up, getting ready for what may come. CBP tells us the group of about 20 officers are preparing for the possible arrival of the migrant caravan.
Viene mucha gente.
Officials don't know the impact the caravan could have if they arrive here. What Julio Almanza, vice president of the northeastern zone of Mexico, does know is neither side of the border is ready.
Este tema, ya que se hablan de más de 3,000 personas, para poder este tema, pues darle atención y poderlos, pues atender, si en caso de que puedan llegar por la zona de Tamaulipas. Ni México ni Estados Unidos está preparado, ¿no?
Officials don't know when or if the caravan will make its way near the valley. We also checked in with Cameron County Sheriff's Office. They say they haven't been contacted by Homeland Security and don't know if they'll play a role, but are ready with armored vehicles. In Brownsville, Sierra Pizarro, Channel 5 News at 6.
Secretary Nielsen, thank you very much for being with us at the Yuma border sector. Obviously, there's so much attention being paid to the border right now. The president just tweeting a short while ago today to those in the caravan, turn around. We are not letting people into the United States illegally. Go back to your country. And if you want to apply for citizenship, do so like millions of others are doing. And to that end, we're also hearing that there's going to be 800, somewhere in that neighborhood, military added to the border. Can you confirm that?
Sure. What we have done is we've been in close conversations with DOD, which is a great partner of ours, as you know. We work on defense support to civil authorities. We do hurricane response together. So what we've asked them to do is help to bolster our capabilities. So we've asked for some air support, for some logistics, some planning, vehicle barriers, engineering, ways in which we can make sure that I can protect my officers and agents as well as the ports of entry themselves.
So in terms of military capability, will they be armed, these 800?
All of the rules of engagement are up to Secretary Mattis. So we make the request for what capabilities we need, and then the Department of Defense determines how they can meet our request.
So how can they bolster security at the border. They can't go into Mexico, correct?
Yes, they can, right, without further agreement, further discussion, correct.
So, but once someone sets foot on this side of the border, we can't touch them anyway, correct?
Once they're on this side of the border, what we intend to do, and I think the president's been very clear, if you do not have a legal right to come to this country and you come as part of this caravan and you come in our country, you will be returned home.
So the rules of engagement are what?
The rules of engagement for us are the same as they've always been. For DOD, we're still in discussions and we're working them out. We're waiting to see what the caravan's going to do, what numbers we're looking like, where they're headed. Each port is different, as you know. You've been to one port, port, so the needs will be different. But what we want to do is bolster it. At the end of the day, we want to make sure that what we saw in Guatemala, between the Guatemala and Mexican border, we do not see here. So we're bringing everything we can to protect the ports of entry and all of the people who work at them.
Is there any scenario under which if people force their way across the border, they could be shot at?
We do not have any intention right now to shoot at people. They will be apprehended, however. But I also take my officer and agent their own personal safety extraordinarily seriously. They do have the ability, of course, to defend themselves.
So if shot at, they would shoot back?
No, I think we'd have to work through that. But I want to make it very clear, we will absolutely not tolerate violence against Border Patrol in this situation. These are dedicated men and women risking their lives every day. I will not tolerate Mexicans or anybody else acting in a violent way towards our men and women on the border.
You took some heat for implementing the zero-tolerance policy that led to the separation of families at the border. How many children are still in custody right now and not reunited with their families, and where are they?
So there's a few hundred. The number that is left, what we have done is we've been working in very close coordination with the court. Of that number, the vast majority of their parents have already been removed, were removed prior to the court injunction. And the parents now, 3 different times, have said they do not want to be reunited.
Really?
So they're not reunited. The kids will stay in HHS care, just as our laws require, and HHS is working hard to find them sponsors and to find a family that does want to be reunited with them.
Incredible. How are they being cared for? Where are they staying? What is that like for them?
So they have HHS runs the shelters for the children. And by the way, I'd pause here to say, we have 13,000 children in the care of HHS right now who came here unaccompanied, whose parents sent them at the hands of strangers, and in some cases criminals or smugglers. And that is an extraordinarily dangerous journey that no system should support. So let me pause there and say that.
13,000, not as part of what came through during
the 13,000
over the last several years. They're in custody.
50,000 last year were sent here unaccompanied by their families. 13,000 are still in HHS care.
And what is that care like?
HHS goes above and beyond. I mean, they get full health care, full dental, they get mental, they get education, they get playtime, they get skill training. They're able to talk to any of their family members who are in this country or in another country. They talk to the consulate. They talk to if they need any additional special needs. They are treated with the utmost respect and utmost care. They are above and beyond standards of most all of our states in terms of how they care for those children.
Do you think that the criticism was unjustly placed on you? Do you think it belongs more with these parents who you're now saying in some cases didn't even want their children back?
I think that as the Secretary of Homeland Security, I will continue to enforce the laws of this country. I expect the people who work at the Department of Homeland Security to do the same. That's the oath that we took. I do think the system is broken. I've spent a lot of time working with Congress, but I've also spent a lot of time talking to the governments of Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, and Mexico, and asking them, please, better message what this is like. We have 30% of all women that take this flow, make this migration, sexually abused. 70% of all migrants who take this journey are a victim of violence. Girls over 9, we have to give pregnancy tests to just to care for them because the abuse on this trip is so horrible, so heart-wrenching.
You've seen a tremendous spike since the zero-tolerance policy ended.
Yes.
Of people who bring in a child.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Fraud is through the roof. Those of us who have visited in the region are told absolutely that it is advertised as a way to get into the United States, to take a child and bring them here. As part of this recent migration, in talking with some of my foreign partners, they report kidnappings. flat out smugglers and criminals picking up children to try to come into the United States to take advantage of our loopholes. But we have 40% more families at the end of this year who have crossed illegally than we have ever had in the history of our country. Right now, we apprehend within 3 days the number of families that we can eventually remove in a year.
So you've had such an increase of families. It sounds to me like you're saying because you ended the zero tolerance policy, the White House ended it, then it became clear that if you came in as a family, you wouldn't be separated, you would be allowed to stay. So people, you're claiming, are now finding ways to come in with a child. Do you think if you had stuck with the zero tolerance policy longer, that message would have been
the smugglers are
a better way to combat the problem?
Yeah, the smugglers are smart. I mean, the part that I cannot, through any executive means, change is the Flores settlement, which limits the time that we can keep a family together to 20 days. And the smugglers know that. So even whatever the case is and whatever we do on the border, and again, as you know, that applied to anybody who illegally crossed, the smugglers are still saying, if you go, you know, worst case scenario, you're going to be in detention for 20 days, and then you'll be let go.
Happening now south of the border, the caravan of Central American migrants continues their long journey towards the U.S. The number of people in the caravan now estimated around 4,000 to 5,000. According to ABC, that number down from approximately 7,000 when the group started on their journey. They're about 1,000 miles from the U.S.-Mexico border. Their exact destination still not known. Well, watch out for intruders. That is the latest warning from Border Patrol. And it's not people crossing the border. It is from people from out of town coming here to watch what happens. Channel 5's Kristen Von Preissing joins us live from along the border to explain.
Border Patrol says that caravan is headed towards our border, and they're saying for that reason, national media and even armed civilians could be headed this way onto landowners' property without their permission. They're asking landowners not only to stay alert, but also to notify Border Patrol if those people do show up. A couple hundred feet from the Rio Grande and Mission, Fred Cavazos lives at the same house his family used to keep as a corner store. Over the years, Conway Avenue expanded from dirt to pavement, and their property on both sides of the border shrunk a bit. Now Cavazos' property is on the path of the border wall. He says his tiny neighborhood is getting lots of national media attention.
They are starting to get ready to build, I think. They were getting so much people from media coming over to want to interview us and just tell them what we think about the fence that they want to put up.
Now Border Patrol says new developments with the so-called caravan of Central American migrants heading to the border will drive more out-of-towners this way. In an email sent to landowners on Wednesday, Border Patrol says members of the media and armed civilians could be coming because of growing interest in the border. They're warning those people might not ask for permission to enter. The National Butterfly Center in Mission is one of the organizations that received that email. Executive Director Mariana Trevino-Wright doesn't believe it.
It's one more effort on behalf of Border Patrol to get people to vacate the area they want.
Trevino says she's confident her property won't have any trouble with trespassers. Cavazos is getting ready for more of the unannounced visitors. We did ask Border Patrol why they sent out this message and why they're asking landowners to notify them if somebody shows up on their property. They responded and they told us that there have been situations like this in the past, and they also want landowners to have a point of contact in case an unauthorized person does show up on their property. We're going to have a full statement online from Border Patrol live at the border. Kristen Von Preissing, Channel 5 News at 6.
And concerns are growing over voter fraud as the Democrat Party in Texas faces a possible criminal investigation after it allegedly solicited non-citizens to vote. One America's Pearson Sharp explains.
Democrats aren't taking any chances as they set their sights on recapturing the House and Senate this November. That means making sure any and all voters get out to the polls to help them win, even if they aren't American citizens. In Texas, the Democrat Party is under fire after it was discovered soliciting non-citizens to register to vote. The federal Justice Department is now looking into the matter after being alerted by the Public Interest Legal Foundation, a nonprofit organization devoted to investigating voter fraud. Democrats were mailing out altered registration forms to immigrants, marking yes on the application where it asked whether or not the voter was a citizen. And for those who weren't sure, the form instructed them to register anyway and mail it back immediately, just in case. District attorneys are also reviewing a signed affidavit from a man who says his relatives are migrants and still received the application to register. A spokesman for the Public Interest Legal Foundation, Logan Churchwell, says this is an example of how the Democrat Party is fighting to use foreign influence to throw the election in their favor. Even the Secretary of State's office was getting calls in Texas, with officials reporting complaints from both migrants and the relatives of dead people who claimed they were getting applications to register in the mail. Families said relatives who had died over 10 years ago were still receiving mailers, including one woman whose child had been dead for 19 years. A spokesman for the Texas Secretary of State said it appeared Democrats were using really bad information in what could amount to a scam. So bad, in fact, it prompted some migrants to write in questioning whether or not the laws had changed and they were now eligible to vote. While there is a law that prohibits encouraging ineligible people to vote, officials said it's not clear if pre-checking a citizenship box would qualify for breaking that law. Most cases of voting error occur at the DMV, where voters are pressured to register. But in this case, it's the Democrat political party itself directly sending out falsified applications. Pearson Sharp, One American News.
Turns out San Francisco is trying an expensive experiment in democracy. The city is allowing non-citizen parents to vote in school board elections.
KPIX5 political reporter Melissa Kane on just how many people have actually signed up. Melissa?
Yeah, Alan and Liz, we do have some numbers for you today. Now, in 2016, San Francisco's citizens voted to allow non-citizens with children to vote in school board elections. And now that first non-citizen election is almost here, the city has spent about $300,000 making arrangements, and only 49 citizens have registered. And that works out to about $6,000 a person.
We assumed that it would be many thousands potentially that could register, and so far we're at 49.
John Arntz is the director of San Francisco elections, and he says non-citizen information cannot be part of the regular voter file. So a whole new system had to be created.
So we had to create a separate database. We've created a separate ballot for these folks. We have separate roster pages for the polling places. We have a separate registration affidavit. We have a separate vote by mail ballot application. There's a separate website page.
His office budgeted $160,000 for the new systems, and the city gave out more than $100,000 to nonprofits to do community outreach.
So if you combine those two totals, roughly $310,000.
Still, non-citizens aren't registering, and it may have to do with a state law that says voter information is not totally private. The Department of Elections website says any information you provide to the Department of Elections, including your name and address, may be obtained by Immigration and Customs Enforcement, ICE, and other agencies, organizations, and individuals. Amy Lin is the Immigration Rights Program Manager at Chinese for Affirmative Action, and they've been doing community outreach to non-citizens. She says it's not just about the number of voters, it's about empowerment.
The idea behind putting forward non-citizen voting for immigrant parents is a way to encourage people, community members, to be more involved, right, within their neighborhood, within the school, and the folks they interact with on a day-to-day basis.
And while the price tag for that empowerment may be steep, she says it's worth it.
For us, it's a long time coming, and it's a victory actually to all San Franciscans who are part of this community.
Now, not all non-citizens can register to vote. Remember, they're only voting for the Board of Education. So this is limited to parents or legal guardians of children under 19. But that is still actually a big group. City officials say that 1/3 of all parents whose kids are in San Francisco public schools are non-citizens. Melissa Kane, KPIX5.
Get out and vote. With a tight midterm election, groups are trying to push for young people to vote early. News Channel 5's Matthew Torres explains an effort to not only get young voters to hit the polls, but immigrants as well. Matthew?
Well, Rory, there's actually an event happening right now called the Hustle Party. It is a time here with food and drinks and the space for volunteers to reach out and text eligible voters to vote early tonight. It is also part of a campaign that encourages young immigrant voters to hit the ballots, and that push started even before tonight.
So we have some candidates this year that are up for election.
It's a unique lunch break for 50 high school students.
You guys are in like an integral part to the work we do.
Items on today's menu aren't just food.
What did someone else say?
We get to choose who's in office and who's making the decision.
They're learning how the voting process works.
So you can register, but you can't register for this election. You wouldn't be able to vote for this election, but you can start voting in 2019.
And encouraged to get classmates to vote.
And write down at least 5 people that you're going to bring out to the polls.
The majority can't cast a ballot yet, but for 18 of them from different nationalities.
If one person say it doesn't matter and 10 more people say the same thing, then nobody ends up voting.
The hour-long break was a chance to exercise their right.
I just voted for the first time.
V. Lee moved here from Vietnam. 2 years ago, she became a citizen.
I've wanted to feel represented in the election and have a voice in what my future looks like, and I feel very proud of voting because I know a lot of people don't get the opportunity to.
So this is just like a reminder to tell them like, hey, this is happening, come out and vote.
Even though she can't vote, Senior Catherine Izaguirre helped organize the event.
I'm not able to vote. I am a DACA recipient.
She knows her classmates can make a difference in policies that affect people like her.
If I'm not able to vote, I can still get other people to vote.
The main goal is to energize young immigrant voters who many say have a powerful voice.
They're a part of our economy, our education, and I think they deserve the right to be represented in the election.
Advocates say the immigrant youth eligible to vote will spike in the next decade, so a taste of what they can do starts now.
It's like the sleeping giant. We're a really big group, and it's very powerful. If you can vote, you can make a big change.
The event and campaign is in partnership with the group Turk Votes. As you can see, the party is still underway with music. It is here at Casa Azafran and will last until 7 o'clock tonight. Reporting live in South Nashville, Matthew Torres, News Channel 5.
We're taking a look tonight at how the candidates for U.S. Senate disagree on the best way to solve immigration issues.
Well, Rose Schmidt sat down for one-on-one interviews with both of them and tells us what they would do if they get elected next month, Rose.
Well, you may have seen political ads about immigration. It's one of the top 2 issues that is most searched online across Wisconsin, meaning it's on voters' minds with just 12 days until the midterm elections. On the issue of immigration, we see some of the most drastic differences between the 2 candidates for U.S. Senate.
The way that we have brought people who have different priorities in the immigration debate together is by including a comprehensive package that looks at border security and strengthens it.
For Democrat Tammy Baldwin, that includes a pathway to citizenship for so-called dreamers and a year-round guest worker program to help Wisconsin's dairy farmers. But her opponent, Leah Vukmir, makes it clear she won't consider other alternatives until a wall is built on the U.S.'s southern border.
I stand with the president and, quite frankly, a good number of people across the state of Wisconsin who feel it's very important that, first and foremost, we have the commitment that we will have that border security.
Vukmir pointed to human trafficking, drug trafficking, and outbreaks of diseases as reasons the wall needs to be in place. But a question on many people's minds, how would the federal government pay for that wall? President Trump has said Mexico should.
We're going to have to look for a lot of ways, and I think we can do it. There's a lot of waste in government, and I know that we can find a way to build that wall.
She says after the wall is built, she would consider helping children who were brought over the border by their parents. But refusing to consider other alternatives now is an approach Baldwin calls irresponsible.
Leah Vukmir has said, I won't talk about anything until we build Trump's wall. I won't talk about anything. I think that's irresponsible. We don't need a political issue. We need a solution.
Marquette Law School poll numbers show support for a path to citizenship is drastically different among political parties, with 90% of Democrats supporting it, but only 43% of Republicans in support of it.
All right, Rose Schmidt reporting that. Rose, thank you
for being with us for the news at 6. She was in the U.S. for 18 years, and her life changed in an instant.
Now a court has decided to give her case another look. We've been following Seal Prachetai's deportation for months. The Sterling Heights woman was deported in May, and her kids followed her to Albania shortly after. Tonight, our Coco McAvoy spoke to her husband about the possibility of having his family reunited.
Yes, and the family is excited, but they're also afraid to get too excited because the case could be dismissed again. But this latest court ruling is really giving them hope, and that's something that they haven't had in a very long time. Peter Gojcevich's life drastically changed in a matter of months.
Devastating, lonely. I mean, I wake up every day and just look at those pictures, cry myself to sleep looking at their pictures, missing my family.
His wife, Seal Prachetai, was deported to Albania. Their 3 young kids made the difficult choice to follow their mom, leaving their dad behind.
Give your grandma
Now, 3 months later,
That's the best news we've ever had so far.
after several appeals and denials, the Sixth Circuit Court in Cincinnati ruled in Seal's favor, believing the Board of Immigration Appeals should reopen her asylum case.
And they realize there is more to this case than the lower courts have seen.
Attorney Michael Lacey believes it's a safety issue.
It's very dangerous for her to be there. It's dangerous for her children because they're Americans and they could be kidnapped at any time and used for ransom.
Peter says the kids are optimistic about the appeal.
So they started packing up and getting ready to go. We said, no, this is a long process.
But it is a promising step.
I hope they can see it in their heart to reunite my family with me.
It will be months before the family knows if they'll be able to come back to the United States. And the board really has three options here. They can deny the case, or they can send it back here to Detroit for a new trial, or they can grant her asylum. We'll, of course, continue to follow this case. Reporting live this evening, I'm Coco McAvoy, Local 4.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Hanrahan.
And I'm Jane McCarthy. We have been closely following this story. The Spokane City Council passed an ordinance declaring certain city properties off limits to immigration officers.
The ordinance seeks to end the U.S. Border Patrol practice where agents board Greyhound buses at the Spokane Intermodal Center and ask riders about their citizenship status. Graham 2's Amanda Rowley asked our city mayor and the police chief how this ordinance will be enforced. She joins us live with what she found out. Amanda?
I asked Mayor David Condon and Spokane Police Chief Craig Meidel if they'd be sending police officers here to the Spokane Intermodal Center to keep U.S. Border Patrol agents off the buses, and they said no. Now, Chief Meidel says he first wanted to acknowledge the harms committed toward people who have been contacted at the Intermodal Center, even across the state, by Border Patrol agents. He says in the department's discussions with the City Council on this ordinance, they wanted to reiterate that federal law is supreme. And talking to Mayor Condon today, he acknowledged this as well.
They do not have to ask for our permission, and conversely, we cannot impede their work.
So my direction to the department has been, I do not want you guys being civilly or criminally charged by interfering with the Border Patrol. So we will not interfere, we will not challenge them, we will not hinder them, we will not delay them. That's not our role.
Chief Meidel sent out this guidance document to the Spokane police employees related to the immigration ordinance. It reads in part that the city of Spokane does not expect its employees to determine if federal enforcement agents are acting within the proper authority. And it also says the new ordinance does not make it the duty of city employees to stop and question agents of ICE, Border Patrol, or any other federal agency. That includes even inquiring if they have a judicial criminal warrant. Now, the document does say, however, city employees should contact their supervisor if they believe they're in a situation that requires action based on this new ordinance. Reporting here in downtown Spokane, Amanda Rowley, KREM 2 News.
This is Frank Contreras reporting for CGTN News from the Suchiate River, marking the border between Guatemala on that side and here in Mexico. This is the place where the migrants in the caravan crossed over this river into Mexico from Central America. We're told on this day there's still a couple thousand more migrants in a separate group on the Guatemalan side preparing to make their journey across this river. A few days ago, on this very river, about a week ago I should say, about 7,000 people crossed through here. They used some of these rafts that you're seeing behind you. They're large tire tube rafts. The people aboard that particular raft you're seeing here are not migrants. They're actually Guatemalans who come into Mexico to purchase merchandise. Then they take it back across the river border and sell it in Guatemala for a better price. This is part of informal commerce, the Mexican government calls it, here, taking place every single day on this border area here. This is the location, as I said before, where the migrants in the migrant caravan crossed over. We're told that more than 7,000 of them passed through here. And just a few minutes ago, CGTN had an interview with the mayor of this town on the Mexican side called The mayor, Sonia Hernandez, told CGTN that they took a head count. They created several shelters to receive the migrants the day they arrived. And for the migrants to be able to get into those shelters and get some water and some shade, they had to register their names, their ages, whether they're male or female, and what nationality they're from. And according to that count, which is not scientific, but it's a pretty good approximation of the numbers of people, they got that 7,000 number. But more interestingly, perhaps, inside that number, CGTN has learned that 2,370 of the migrants crossing through were children, essentially anywhere from infants, newborns, all the way up to 17 years old. Anybody who is a minor, who is not an adult, essentially. That was the head count. And so according to the mayor here, 2,370 some minors traveling in that first group of migrants that we've been covering here on CGTN. And so that number of people is among the larger group that's going to try to make its way north to the border with the United States. They know it's going to be a very long, hard journey. They're talking about a journey of more than 1,500 kilometers still. And so it's going to be a difficult passage for them. Some of them are children with their families, and they know that the United States government under President Donald Trump has been arresting family members and in some cases separating children from their parents. So this is quite a risk that the family members say they're willing to take because they know that the situation in the United States economically is by far better than what they live on the Central American side of the border. All of the migrants that we've been speaking to say that they're fleeing intense poverty. They tell us that inflation has risen dramatically in recent years in Honduras, and that the government there has imposed new higher taxes on the people to try to help pay for social services, according to the government. But the people say that their government is corrupt and they're unable to pay those taxes, and so the economic situation has basically forced them, they say, to leave their country. A good number of migrants have also told CGTN that they're fleeing violence due to crime-related activities taking place in Honduras at the hands mostly of gang members belonging to Mara Salvatrucha groups and other gang members in that Central American country. On this particular day, though, it's quite calm and peaceful here on this border area. Far behind me here on the river, you can see people aboard rafts. Some of them, yes, are migrants coming in broad daylight across the border here. Right across to me, out of our picture here to camera left here, there's a group of federal police. We won't be able to show you them because they've asked for anonymity. They don't want to be shown on camera, is what I'm trying to tell you. And so, but they're going to be standing right here as these migrants come ashore in broad daylight. Mexico says it's doing all it can to try to control the flow of undocumented immigrants, but it really can't stop them entirely without using violence. The Mexican government has decided not to take that route. So what's happening now is when the migrants do come ashore, as you're going to see with this group here on this raft here, our cameraman Jimmy Hernandez showing you the pictures here, they're going to come ashore and they're going to make their way by foot to the next Mexican town about 35 kilometers distance away from here. They're going to walk to the next town, which is Tapachula, and there they can register with Mexican government officials. Actually, correcting myself here, you see an agent here dressed in beige and a green top, and the white shirted agent. These are immigration agents belonging to the Mexican government. They're checking people's identifications now as we speak live here on Facebook. CGTN showing you these pictures live. The Mexican government is asking for IDs. They're going to register these people. And so they're not able to just come in at will, as I was reporting earlier. Now, Mexican immigration services are actually reviewing these documents the people bring and checking to see. So they're allowing them to pass in now, as you can see. And this is quite an unusual moment you're going to see live right now before your very eyes. This is the system Mexico has been using to try to deal with the flow of undocumented immigrants from Central America into Mexico. There are Mexican federal police here. ¿Los puedes ver en la imagen, Jimmy? Ellos? Okay. We're going to show you more heavily armed Mexican federal police here, standing by, protecting the flow and the peace here as the migrants make their way into Mexico. And again, this is a pretty unusual moment that you see live here on Facebook, CGTN broadcasting these images to you. We've been here pretty much a week now, bringing you reports, live reports on the news channel, and also video reports showing you what the migrants have been going through. Most of them claim that they're fleeing widespread poverty and violence. The Mexican government understands that, and they're trying to deal with it as much as they can. The President of the United States, Donald Trump, says that he will cut off aid to Central American nations who says nothing to stop the flow of the migrants. Mexico has not received any threats from the Trump administration in terms of cutting off aid or anything of that sort. But there have been threats by Trump to seal off the border between Mexico and the United States. Trump says he'll use the military to do that because he sees these migrants as a threat to U.S. security, he says. This is all happening, of course, as you know, right as a midterm election is about to take place in the United States. And these migrants are very well aware that is the fact, that their very presence in Mexico could spur the vote in the United States. Donald Trump has even named the caravan itself as part of one of the issues that people will be voting on, U.S. citizens will be voting on as they choose the members of their Congress and Senate in this coming midterm election scheduled for November 6th in the United States. So there are politics surrounding this situation. At last report, we were told that this whole migrant caravan phenomenon this time, this October, took place largely because a well-known journalist in Honduras, a man named Bartholomew Fuentes, was able to send a message out to people who were planning to join a caravan. That story was covered on a major news channel in Honduras, a channel called HCH. They broadcast the news, and the anchors of that news channel, according to media reports, told viewers in Honduras that this journalist would be paying their passage, their food and housing, and the anchors invited, according to media reports, they invited Hondurans to join the caravan. And so mass numbers of people started to join up. And so a rumor spread on local television in Honduras, apparently, according to media reports, is what sparked this great number of people to come across this time to cross the river here. We were speaking, as I said earlier, to officials here in the town of Suchiate, government officials at the municipal level who've been watching the migration phenomenon now for decades. One of them is the vice mayor here. He told CGTN that he's 60 years old, and in his entire life, he had never seen such a great flow of humanity at one single time passing over. And again, that due apparently to the fact that a Honduran television channel broadcast some of the news here. We're going to show you another raft coming aboard here, coming ashore, I should say. They're going to be met by Mexican immigration officials. The woman is wearing a skirt that is typical of indigenous people in Guatemala. It makes me think that these two ladies are probably from Guatemala. They're being met immediately by two Mexican immigration officials, the official in white and the official wearing a green shirt there. They're checking people's identification papers and cards. And you can see people are coming across. Señor, ¿ustedes son de Guatemala? Ok. Vienen diario, me imagino que a pasar aquí a hacer comercio, ¿no?
A traer cosas para comer.
Ah, muy
es
bien.
un poco más económico por el
Sí.
tipo de cambio.
¿Cómo se llama usted? Su primer nombre nada más.
Jorge.
Jorge.
Sí.
Okay. Gracias, señor Jorge. Gracias. Thank you. That is Mr. Jorge. He does not want to give his last name. He says they are Guatemalan citizens who come across virtually every day, part of the informal commercial situation taking place here on the border. And they basically come across every day to buy goods here on the Mexican side and then bring them back across the river into towns and villages there in Guatemala where items from Mexico are sold. The items, by the way, are often bought from U.S. department stores and U.S. stores, including places like Sam's Club and Walmart. They sell the merchandise in Mexican pesos to anyone who wants to buy them. Mexico is a free trade area, and it is a market economy. And so people in Guatemala come across, purchase those goods, and then bring them back for sale inside Guatemala. Again, this is part of commerce that takes place here. The Mexican government refers to it as informal commerce because when the items are purchased, taxes are paid for sales taxes and such, but there are no customs taxes charged on those items as they cross back on these rafts across the river here. We're going to pan this way a little bit more and show you some more of the talk taking place here between Mexican immigration officials and some of the people passing through here. It's a fairly peaceful reception the migrants are getting from Mexican immigration officials. They are getting their documents checked, though, I should say. And they're asking them here to show documents. We see a Central American passport the woman is holding. The official now checking it here live on camera for this CGTN news report on Facebook here. This is really an unusual situation. You don't normally see this sort of thing anywhere on television, especially not live, but we're able to bring you that in this moment here in this special broadcast from the Suchiate River, marking the border between Guatemala and Mexico. And this is the kind of thing that takes place virtually every single day here on this borderland area. We're told another group, I should say, of migrants in a second caravan are preparing to cross any day now. It could happen today, tomorrow. It's uncertain when that could take place. And virtually all of the migrants CGTN has been interviewing in these past days insist that they're going to try to make it to the United States-Mexico border. Many of them don't know at all what awaits them. They've never done this journey before. They don't know that the United States uses motion sensors and heat sensors to check whether human bodies are crossing the border at night in the dark time. They really don't know the kind of situation they're going to confront. They just insist that they're going to try to get to the border, and if they can, some of them say they will request asylum in the United States, knowing that the government of President Donald Trump at this point is not very open to the idea of granting mass asylum to people coming in mass numbers, they say. And so this situation will continue. It speaks to the economic conditions in Central America, in this region of the world, and the vast contrast that has with the powerful economy of the United States, one of the world's richest economies. So this is really a phenomenon that involves a push, the violence and poverty, pushing people out of their country, and the pull of economic strength in the United States, and even Honduran families who are already there in many of the southwestern United States cities and throughout the east coast of the United States. These are the two sides that are pushing and pulling migrants toward the border. This is CGTN correspondent Frank Contreras wrapping up our final report here from the river Suchiate, marking the border between Guatemala and Mexico. Be sure to join us for more reports on CGTN News and for a special report on a program called The Heat here on CGTN. Frank Contreras signing off here from the Suchiate River, marking the border between Guatemala and Mexico.